This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
The Other Side of Midnight.
77 WABC.
Local Spotlight.
Good morrow, everyone. This is The Other Side of Midnight on 77 WABC. I'm Frank Morano. I hope you had a great weekend. I certainly did. Jim Walden, who we've talked about a couple of times, the hard-charging attorney with a history of taking on corruption and big institutions, is considering a run for mayor of New York City as a Republican. And while I think he's an interesting candidate who has said some interesting things so far, let's be honest. His candidacy on the Republican side of things is going nowhere. Walden has worked for a lot of prominent Democrats, including many Democrats who aren't too popular in Republican circles, and he has no real history of advocating for conservative causes in New York. Now, that's not to say he's a left-wing radical, but in a Republican primary, where voters are looking for a candidate with a track record of conservative principles and Republican Party involvement, he's a tough sell. He left the Democratic Party in 2006, but switching lanes to the GOP now and expecting to be embraced as its standard bearer, I think that's a long shot in a mayor's race. Look, I don't care how much money he has or how many GOP leaders he can schmooze. There is no realistic scenario where he beats Curtis Sliwa in a Republican primary. Curtis is a known quantity. He's built a loyal following. He's a fighter, and he's got a brand that resonates with Republican voters in this city. Meanwhile, Walden is just now starting to meet with Republican leaders, trying to convince them that he's one of them. That's not how this works. Republican voters in New York have a very limited tolerance for party switchers. I mean, there are some exceptions to that, but who knows? And history has shown that unless you have the charisma of a Giuliani or the bankroll of a Bloomberg, it's a tough road. That said, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for Curtis if Walden jumps into the race. If anything, a contested primary could help Curtis by bringing more attention to his campaign and possibly helping raise more money ahead of a general election. But let's be clear, this is Curtis's race to lose on the Republican side. Walden may have a legal background, a tough-on-corruption message, and a centrist appeal, but that's not enough to win over a Republican base that already has its guy. You saw how much Curtis won by 4 years ago in spite of the fact that he was dramatically outspent. It would be the same thing this time around. Jim Walden may want to follow in the footsteps of Bloomberg and Giuliani, but he's got a long way to go before he's in their league. And if he thinks he's going to waltz into the Republican primary and take down Curtis Sliwa, well, I would say good luck with that, Jim. You're going to need it. Even though I'm all for Curtis, I'm glad that he's running. I say the more candidates, the merrier. The more voices, the more choices New Yorker has, the better we all are. Come on in, the water's fine, but I don't see any way he beats Curtis.
Beam me up!
To be continued.
Subtle results, still you, but with fewer lines. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
The Other Side of Midnight.
77 WABC.
Local Spotlight.
Good morning. Morrow, everyone. This is The Other Side of Midnight on 77 WABC. I'm Frank Morano. New York's district attorneys are pushing for much-needed changes to the state's discovery laws, and they are absolutely right to do so. This isn't a partisan issue. Every single one of New York City's top prosecutors, from Manhattan's Alvin Bragg, who's pretty left-wing, to Staten Island's Mike McMahon, who's pretty conservative, is backing these reforms, and Governor Hochul is now on board as well. So what's happening here? Back in 2019, New York changed its criminal justice laws. By the way, who was governor back then? Who was it? I can't remember. I can never remember. But they changed their discovery laws, including on the discovery process, the rules that dictate how prosecutors share evidence with the defense. The idea was to speed up the process and ensure fairness, when in reality, it has turned into a disaster. The law now requires prosecutors to turn over enormous amounts of material, much of it irrelevant, within a short time frame. If they miss a deadline, even on something trivial, a case can be thrown out entirely. And that's exactly what's been happening. Before these reforms, about 41% of criminal cases in New York City were dismissed. Now, that number has skyrocketed to 62%. Think about that. You get arrested, you have a 6 out of 10 chance of having your case dismissed. That means more than 6 out of 10 cases are getting tossed, not because the accused is innocent, but because of paperwork issues. We've seen violent criminals, repeat offenders, and dangerous individuals walk free on technicalities only to reoffend. Governor Hochul is proposing several key changes to fix this mess. First, she wants to narrow the scope of evidence that prosecutors must turn over so they aren't buried under mountains of unnecessary paperwork. Second, she wants to set a 35-day time limit for defense attorneys to challenge discovery law violations, so they can't wait until the last minute to exploit a technicality. Third, a case can only be dismissed if the defendant can show they were actually harmed by a discovery violation. And finally, judges would have the option to impose lesser sanctions instead of immediately throwing out a case. These are common sense reforms. The system was supposed to ensure fairness, not create loopholes that allow criminals to go free. The Legal Aid Society and progressive activists claim this will hurt defendants. But the truth is, the current law is hurting public safety. We need a justice system that works for victims, not just for those who break the law. When every single district attorney in New York City, liberal and conservative alike, agrees that change is necessary, that should tell us something. The state legislature needs to listen and act. The safety of New Yorkers depends on it.
Beam me up!
To be continued.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Are there limits to the U.S. government's debt growth? What will happen if the debts are not curtailed? What should policymakers or investors do? Those are urgent questions that legendary investor and New York Times bestselling author Ray Dalio addresses in his new book, How Countries Go Broke: The Big Cycle. The book comes out in June and is available for pre-order today, wherever books are sold.
The Other Side of Midnight.
77 WABC.
Local Spotlight.
Folks, what we are hearing and seeing out of Albany is nothing short of outrageous. New York's Democratic lawmakers are cooking up a scheme to leave a congressional district without representation for months, all because they don't like who the voters might elect. And guess what? Governor Kathy Hochul is right at the center of it. Let's go over the facts. Right now, if a congressional seat becomes vacant, state law requires the governor to call a special election within 10 days, and then that election must be held within 70 to 80 days. That ensures that New Yorkers aren't left without representation in Washington for too long. But Democrats in Albany want to change the law conveniently, just as Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik is being considered for a role in the Trump administration. If she's confirmed and steps down, her seat, one that Republicans are favored to win, would be up for grabs. The new bill being floated would give Hochul more time to set the date for a special election, potentially delaying it until the summer or even until November. That means voters in New York's North Country could be without a representative in Congress for months, all because the Democrats are desperate to hold on to their slim majority. Democrats claim this is about saving money and increasing voter turnout. Nonsense. Florida already has special elections scheduled for April 1st to fill 2 vacant Republican seats. The process is simple, it works, and there's no need for these games. If Democrats were really concerned about fairness, they'd follow that example. And maybe they would reduce the 9 days of early voting that there are there now to maybe 2 or 3. This isn't about efficiency, it's about raw political power. Hochul and her allies know that every lost Republican vote in Congress makes it easier for Democrats to push through their agenda. This is an intentional move to deny representation to a Republican-leaning district, just to gain a short-term advantage in Washington. It's a blatant, shameless abuse of power. Voters in New York's 21st district deserve the same representation as every other American. They shouldn't have to wait months just because the governor and state Democrats don't like their politics. Hochul and her allies should not be allowed to get away with this, and I hope every New Yorker, regardless of party, sees this for what it is, a dangerous precedent that puts politics above democracy. Let's be clear. If the roles were reversed, if a Democratic seat was at risk, you better believe this wouldn't be happening. It's a disgrace, and it should be stopped in its tracks. When Governor Cuomo tried to do this, I sued when they tried to keep my congressional seat open, and we won. Now they've learned their lesson, and now they're actually going to try to change the law. It's shameful.
Beam me up!
To be continued.
Experience a progressive lens engineered with AI from Essilor, powered by individual measurements of your visual behavior. A lens personalized to you by an Essilor expert. Discover Verilux XR Track and enjoy instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Find your local Essilor expert today at Essilor.com.
The Other Side of Midnight.
77 WABC.
Local Spotlight.
When Commissioner Jessica Tisch took over the NYPD, she made it clear that she had a different philosophy on policing, one that prioritizes public safety without unnecessary risks. And in just a few weeks, we're already seeing the results. Tisch's decision to limit police car chases to only suspected felonies and violent misdemeanors has led to a staggering 66% drop in vehicle pursuits. Before this change, police chases were leading to more than a crash per day in New York City, putting officers, pedestrians, and innocent drivers in danger. Now, we have not seen an explosion of fugitives on the run, but we also haven't seen any more injuries or fatalities caused by reckless high-speed pursuits. And let's be honest, does it really make sense to endanger the lives of New Yorkers just to catch someone who ran a red light? With modern policing tools like surveillance cameras, license plate readers, GPS tracking, we no longer need to resort to Hollywood-style car chases through busy city streets to catch low-level offenders. Commissioner Tisch's policy is just common sense, and it appears to be working. At the same time, she's doubling down on quality of life enforcement, a move that could have a significant impact on New Yorkers' day-to-day experience. I think this is a positive. Instead of just throwing cops at problems without direction, Tisch is creating a new quality of life division with officers specifically assigned to handle public complaints. That means a more focused approach to cracking down on illegal vendors, public drug use, and other nuisances that degrade our neighborhoods. This is a far cry from the chaos of the past few years when enforcement felt either too aggressive or non-existent. With Tisch's leadership, we're seeing an NYPD that's prioritizing safety without recklessness and quality of life without overreach. Now, will it all work as planned? Time will tell. But so far, cutting back on dangerous car chases without a rise in crime is a win. And making neighborhoods cleaner and safer without random crackdowns is a win. If Commissioner Tisch keeps this up, she might just be the NYPD leader New Yorkers have been waiting for. We've certainly seen a lot of turmoil and a lot of tumult in the leadership of the NYPD over these last 4 years. Maybe this is the kind of stability that we need. And by the way, I was someone that was skeptical of this choice because I usually like a police officer, someone that's been through the ranks, like a Bratton or a Ray Kelly, to head the department. But I have to say, so far, so good, at least as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to Commissioner Tisch on policing.
Beam me up!
To be continued.